Okay, so we have just witnessed Servant episode 8, Boba. So really what it comes down to is this episode is a Julian episode. This is a Rupert Grint, aka Ron Weasley tour de force, and it opens with him now in his car waiting outside of the house before he's got to babysit Jericho. And what's really awesome about this episode, there's a lot going on underneath the hood. And you see that because really what my take is watching this episode is that Julian is withdrawing from alcohol during this episode, and that is why he's starting to have thoughts about the day of the accident, because he's sobering up. He's letting his natural thought processes come in without washing them down with booze. And you see that in this first scene. We see the day of the accident where it's pouring rain. He's knocking on the doors. They're all locked. And he sees, like, on the kitchen table, just like this big piece of meat with a bunch of flies around it. So that will just add to theories of what happened that day. But it makes you think, too, maybe him saying he's the first one to even be there that day later in the episode makes you think if this piece of meat has flies around it, was Sean and Dorothy not at that house for a long time and something happened to Baby in that time? Who knows? But I love how they did this flashback scene with the pouring rain and this creepy piano playing. It was a really good score. And what this episode does brilliantly is it also is gonna kind of come full circle on Julian's character, where he is a total a-hole, but you start seeing his good side come out here and he's having a full transformation in a sense. And that starts too, the theme of him being that there's this quick little scene where he's sitting outside and he beeps his horn at this woman with a baby, but he's actually beeping his horn at her because she dropped her baby's shoe. But she thought he was just trying to rush her. And he even says when he comes in, I can't even do good things right. So he has good intentions, but he comes off the wrong way a lot. And I think that comes full circle to where Leanne says later in the episode when he's holding the doll up that he would never intentionally hurt somebody, that he kind of does it in a way he doesn't really even mean to happen. He's just bad at trying to do good, I guess. Deep down, he is a good person, Julian. I think that's what this episode really kind of wants to get you to by the end of it. So when we get to Sean, he's all dressed up to the nines. He's going out with Dorothy, and then Toby's there, and Toby is going to go on a date with Leanne. But there's little character moments with Julian that are so important because they really highlight how much of a jerk he can be. Like when he calls Toby Gollum here, and later on when he calls the private investigator, he tells him to get off his fat ass. Just solidifying again, this guy, if you met him in real life, you think he's a jerk, but at the end of the day, he'd probably save your life if he had to. But Sean says to Julian here, you've been avoiding me for a week. And Julian tells Sean Natalie hasn't left his apartment and that she's trying to get me off the dairy and headaches are par for the course. Again, we can really think is he's not answering Sean for a week because again, he's decided to withdraw from alcohol and he's not withdrawing from dairy, and that's where the headaches are coming from. And then you see though when Sean and Julian are talking about Natalie, Sean's trying to get at you didn't say anything that can incriminate us. This is Sean's selfish side, and that's what he's really mostly worried about. But what we see here is he's making these little milk dots, which we find out are from Dorothy's breast milk. And Julian actually eats this and is disgusted by it. But it's also showing you he's going for dairy, so he's not withdrawing from dairy. And it also starts this theme of the spheres and just circular in this episode, which you're gonna see a bunch. And that starts with the little drops, and he's talking about Sean it being a sphere. And then it cuts to all the pearls on Dorothy's necklace. And you can then throw it to them talking about going bowling with a bowling ball and being a circle. And then later when Julian's all freaking out, he's going in circles around this house. And he even calls Dorothy Dottie at one point in this episode, which you haven't heard yet, which is just a dot, a circle. And it's even referenced later on when Leanne comes home and she's got the cotton candy. She's talking about how it's made in a circular motion. So this just is a theme going on and how Julian's kind of headspace has been, where he's constantly going in this circle, avoiding just dealing with the truth of the situation. And just basically representing too that his head's spinning in this episode, he's losing his mind, but it's actually his rock bottom, which kind of gets him to enlightenment. But we see here when Dorothy's talking to Leanne, she tells her that this pearl necklace was given to her by Sean on their first anniversary. So it obviously means a lot to her. You gotta take note of that because Leanne's gonna let that thing fall later on. She knows it's important to Dorothy. And she even mentions to Leanne that it has the tiniest little clasp that only the tiniest fingers can kind of take off, which Leanne clearly has. So there's no way she would accidentally do that. And just funny moments of humor here when she tells Leanne they're going to the annual television awards and Leanne's like, have you been? And then she's cut off by Dorothy and Dorothy says, invited? Yes. Just covering up the fact that she hasn't been nominated for anything. So Dorothy though thinks that Toby, who she's going on a date with, is into Leanne and is kind of trying to encourage her. And I love that Dorothy just takes a photo of them together like they're going to prom. And man, when everyone leaves and Julian's on babysitting duties, this is where things just start going crazy. He's calling calling the private investigator because he finds the doll and it's not a baby anymore. And he wants to know if Leanne has this baby at the date. And she doesn't. And then he calls Sean and Dorothy. They're doing their thing. And he can't really talk to Sean because he's with Dorothy. You know, Julian's got this weird thing too where him and Sean are putting money in this pouch in the wine cellar as collateral just in case their theories are true that Leanne and her uncle are just here for blackmail and that they're gonna have to pay them off if the truth gets out about what happened that day. But you see here now that Julian starts drinking a sip of wine, but he's going easy with it. And it's important to show him smoking weed a couple times this episode because he's taken the edge off of not just relying fully on booze here. And basically this sequence though of Julian bugging out with the doll is just great. And I particularly love this fast camera angle that is just, again, in this circular motion, going back to the theme here, around Julian when he's bugging out. That was the coolest direction decision Lisa Brolman could have pulled off there. And now my big theory here too is when the dad comes, he is not really there. This is Julian hallucinating, and that is from the withdrawals. Again, that is a common thing when you have severe alcohol withdrawals, you can get hallucinations. But the guy who plays the dad here is great. There's a humorous moment here where he is holding the doll and going along with it, and then he's like, you could have told me they were out before I started doing that. And Julian's like, I want to see you perform it. And the dad's flipping out about Dorothy planning to have a baptism for a doll. He's like, we cannot do that. And he even says a line when they go to the wine cellar that they should sell this place. It's filled with ghosts. And I guess you could say the dad's a ghost here, in my opinion. And Julian's like, I don't think we should. So that also goes to their hiding something here on this property, him and Sean. That would just be a bad idea. Why wouldn't they move out, you would think, but there's got to be a reason for that. But the dad here asks Julian, why aren't you drinking? Are you drying out? And Julian says, ish. So he's like weaning off of it. So he drinks a little more here. But the dad tells him the idea of having a different baby that looks just like Jericho. It only have different DNA. And Julian mentions the thought of thinking of something similar. I'm starting to think that it was Julian who came up with this idea with the baby. And that's why his dad's saying a repeated idea to him. I do think it's just all in Julian's head. And you see, too, how I talked about in the previous episode, Julian's struggles with guilt, and that's what caused him to drink a lot. And the dad saying to him, I don't know how you're coping, Julian, after. And Julian just responds, I didn't do anything. So that's obviously a soft spot for him. So now we see Leanne is coming home with Toby. She goes to kiss Toby, is actually rejected, and he's like, it's not you, which could be looked at in certain ways, and I wonder why Toby didn't go for it. That I couldn't figure out. Let me know what you thought of that. But you see Julian confronts Leanne right away and is like, where is the real baby? So what you gotta see from this is that Leanne is protecting this real baby from Sean and Julian. When she's not there to watch it, she's putting that doll in. And that's confirmed because you see later on when Sean gets home, he goes and sees the doors open near the kitchen, and that cuts to Wanda passing Toby in the street carrying an empty baby seat. So she brought the real baby over and switched it out. So there's something going on between her and Leanne doing this, protecting that baby. And I love this moment when Julian's confronting her about her having a fake identity, and she just blows her breath into him and is like, does my breath smell? Because all she's really thinking about at that moment is, why did I just get rejected by Toby? I just love Nell Tiger-Free in this role. She's really just killing it on all cylinders as Leanne. And it's so important. You need an actress to do really good on that role, because you could really screw up such a complicated character and it could bring a show down, but she's just stepped up to the plate. So props to her. And just a funny little moment when she's talking about this cotton candy, Julian quickly grabs more of these little milk drops, knowing it's his sister's breast milk. Such an odd moment. And this is just a great moment here where you get on the edge of the seat where Leanne's like, what did you find, Julian, when you came to see them? And he's offering her money to combat this. And again, it's like this really high price he's getting to, like $100,000. And this is going back to him and Sean's paranoia, mostly Julian, that they just want money and that the end game for Leanne and the uncle is just bribing them and blackmail. And she thinks this whole doll thing's to torment them. But no, he's misreading this. And you get this big moment where Julian's holding the doll over the stairs and Leanne's like, you would never intentionally hurt someone, Julian. And you hear the baby cry. So the real baby's there. He connects the dots. And this is the best Rupert Grint we've seen in this show yet, when he's slamming the pot and he's like, wake up, little baby, where are you? And we get another flashback of him that day, and he actually gets in the house, sees this piece of meat with the flies, then goes upstairs. The baby chandelier is just spinning, and that great creepy piano's playing, so you just wonder, what did he find? And then Julian has this big moment where his character comes around because he's hit this breaking point of just a psychotic breakdown mixed with withdrawal, facing his demons, and he comes to Leanne in the room and was like, I was the first one here talking about that day. And this is when Julian's like kind of having an awakening. And you see, when Dorothy and Sean get back, Sean mentions that he smells the bottle of wine was opened by Julian. But he goes down and it stares in the cellar and he sees it wasn't. So was Julian even hallucinating him drinking? Did Did Julian even drink at all this episode? And this is just shocking to Sean because he knows Julian's a full-on alcoholic. And you see, when Dorothy gets back upstairs, the real baby's there, and Julian's like, may I hold him? You never see him like this towards the kid. He smiles towards the baby. So I think Julian now is going to be on Team Leanne, and he sees that side of it and is facing what really happened that day. Well, Sean is still in denial. And that we're seeing as an audience that Leanne really is, I think, the good in this story. And she's broken down Julian to get his good out. And you see, Sean is telling Julian here, they sat us at a guest table at this event, which is also hysterical. And he's like, I thought Dorothy was going to lose her mind, but she was totally cool. It's like she's a different person. And he's like, maybe it's the baby, or maybe it's Leanne being in this house. And he's right about that, Sean. That Leanne has actually been really helping Dorothy at the end of the day. And he's seeing the results of that. But Julian drops the hammer here and says, she knows, I told her everything. And it's just a great reaction by Toby Kebbell here, who plays Sean, where he's like, what the F? So this is where fireworks are going to happen. Julian has told Leanne everything, and it's going to make Sean, and now we see Dorothy look bad. Dorothy is not innocent in this. We've seen her be really rude to Leanne as well, and you know that something bad happened with Dorothy because of the way Leanne in the next scene looks at Dorothy and treats her, literally dropping all these pearls from her very important necklace on purpose. And Dorothy's like, Leanne, you're so clumsy. And then Leanne eats one of the pearls for this power she has, and you see that she's like, oh, there's probably some under the bed, and Dorothy goes, her head's under the bed. Is Leanne about to kill this woman? What did she find out about Dorothy? This is an amazing cliffhanger. I screamed. I couldn't believe how good it was. Just the amount of stuff that just, like, as the audience, you feel in Julian's shoes, and you're going from being on his kind of side in the beginning and that this is a madhouse to him kind of seeing what's really going on. It was just spectacular how it was presented and just kind of revealed itself. That to me is just a payoff on its own and keeping a lot of mystery left, clearly. I just cannot praise the creator and writer of all this, Tony Bascalop, and the director here of this episode, Lisa Broman. It was just masterful to me. And for horror TV, it's such a rare, thin area in the history of television that's had great stuff. But in recent times, it's gone up, and that's with Haunting of Hill House last year being one of my favorite shows of all time. And now Servant really stepping it up. It's great seeing it in this medium, this kind of suspense, thriller, mystery working so well. This episode, it was just showing that genre, what it can do in this format. Head spinning galore, some reveals here, character payoffs, and the acting just phenomenal, and the music on point. For me, this episode is getting a 9.8. I am blown away. Maybe I'm just so hyped because I just watched it, but I loved it. I thought it was just a treat, and I'm sure I'm going to watch it a bunch of times more. And it makes me so excited for what's to come in the next episode. Let me know down below what you thought of this episode, any of your theories you have. I'd love to hear any of them. And please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews of Servant. I'll be doing every episode, and I'll be covering The Outsider coming up. And make sure you check out my reviews of Watchmen and His Dark Materials as well, I just did. And please follow me at Steve Varley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.